Strategy, insights, analysis are actually the easy part. They're important, but they're the easy part. Executing is really hard.
My guest today is someone whose career has been defined by bold leaps, from private equity to launching Uber across Europe to co-founding one of Canada's fastest growing fintechs. As the CEO and co-founder of Float, Rob Khazzam has built a company that's reimagining how Canadian businesses manage and move their money. He's also trying to fix Canada's business finance stack. Please welcome to the Iteration Lab, Rob Khazzam.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you here. Thanks for coming by. So we're going to get right into it and dive into some questions. Take me back to the beginning. What were you like as a little boy?
I grew up in Toronto. I'm a son of immigrants. My parents grew up, my father from Montreal. My mom was born in Iran, and I have two sisters. I was the least studious in the family, I would say. My sisters were very academic. I struggled to do my homework on time. I procrastinated a lot. It took me a while to get myself in gear from a school and academic perspective. But I was always fascinated by technology and always fascinated by how the world worked. And that, I think, fed well into an entrepreneurial journey later in life.
I can imagine and relate to a few of those points. You grew up in Toronto, passionate about early tech. Where did that entrepreneurial spark come from?
I don't know. I was born in 86, so I think the mid-90s were like a real interesting period for technology. I was always drawn to gadgets, like whether it was beepers or CD players, early Dell desktops, CD-ROM burners. I was always the kid that was like, Mom, Dad, will you buy me this CD-ROM burner? I really want to get it, and then I can sell these CDs at school. I want to buy this, 1.3 megapixel digital camera that I found on eBay. That was back when they were like so poor. And they would always say, well, you got to do your homework first. You have to achieve this first, and then we'll do it. So I always wanted to be an early adopter. And I read a lot of books about technology companies. And, come the late 90s, early 2000s, I remember fondly being up till 2 a.m. as a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, dial-up modem to cable modem. And that for me was like a life-changing moment, coming home from school and realizing that I had access to high-speed internet and learning how to do FTP servers and basic HTML. I felt very insecure about my place in school, but online and technology, I always felt like I actually knew something that other people didn't. And I fantasized about being one of those people that got to one day build something in the technology space that changed the world.
So you had an immediate connection.
100%.
Technology.
Yeah, 100%.
That's great.
A lot of side hustles. Yeah.
Private equity gave you a front row seat to how some companies succeed or fail.
Yeah.
But you've said that you didn't feel fulfilled there. So why make the leap to Uber, and what did it teach you about scaling quickly and navigating chaos?
Yeah. So, I spent 5 years in private equity investing. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Intellectually, I really enjoyed the finance, the financial modeling, studying companies. And you'd write these long memos about what the company should do. And I would rationalize it intellectually. And then, years would go by and nothing would happen. And we'd meet them every quarter. And so I found it very unfulfilling. There wasn't a fast feedback loop. And so I went on a long journey figuring out what to do next. I wanted to join a startup and find a way to be one of these companies that built something, that created something. And very quickly, I learned that strategy, insights, analysis are actually the easy part. They're important, but they're the easy part. Executing is really hard. And so my first few months of Uber, they really hammered into me. I was a city launcher. So I didn't work in HQ in some big fancy office. I was sent to Romania, the Czech Republic, Slovakia. I was the first person in the country. And you have a lot of stuff to do. You get a list of 150 things. You got to get an office. You got to find the first 5 drivers. You got to figure out how they get phones distributed to all of them. You got to build a pricing model. And you have to get things done. And getting the business off the ground, especially that first year or two, is about execution. And that was something I was really drawn to.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, it was.
That's awesome. How did those lessons set you up for the leap into founding Float?
they set me up in a couple of ways. One is that is what starting a company is like. You dream of the vision and the mission and all these things, but there's an awful lot of things to just get done at the very beginning. And Uber really developed that in me, this idea of every single week, you don't do things, you don't work on things, you must achieve things, you must cross things off the list. And so our first few months, my co-founders and I working together, was very intense, very execution oriented. What are we getting done? Not this quarter, not this year, not this month. What are we getting done this week? And what are we each going to personally get done today? And we would meet at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. and then we'd meet at 5. And we'd do the same thing on a weekly basis. And we'd go around in a circle and hold each other accountable. If we want to have 10 customers at the end of this month, well, we need to reach out to 20. We need to talk to prospects. We need to get feedback. And so it was about this cycle of feedback. We want to achieve, try, attempt, fail what a normal team would do in a quarter in 1 week. And I think that really helped us build momentum. It helped us fail quickly, get signal quickly. And ultimately, we're in the business of serving Canadian finance teams and businesses. And so being customer obsessed, not intellectualizing too much what we should build and do, but actually talking to customers. What are the problems that you're facing right now? What is keeping you up at night? We met, hundreds of business owners and we took notes. We asked them the same questions. We would start to build something. We'd see what they thought about it. We'd get feedback. Sometimes it was good. Sometimes it was brutal. And we would just iterate. And I think the first 24, 36 months of a startup, that's what it's about. It's about finding product market fit.
When you were making the transition to Float, who were the people that you leaned on most for advice?
A ton. I mean, I think if you have success in life, you learn to cheat by simply asking people who are smarter than you, have more experience than you, what did you do, what worked, what didn't work. It's like one of the only free lunches in life. And so I spoke to a lot of people, people I worked with at Uber. Dan Park is an early Uber employee and leader that I worked with. He ran Uber Eats Canada while I ran Uber Rides Canada. He was building Clutch. And I said, how did you get into this? How did you make this transition? What's important? Kirk Simpson, Les Whitting from Wave Financial were early founders and built that company and were early investors in Float. Michael Hyatt. I had 3 or 4 amazing executives that I worked for at Uber. And I called them religiously to ask them, how do you approach hiring in these areas? How do you think about managing parts of a company you've never managed? And then investors and fundraising for me was, I knew the finance part of it. Pitching a story, pitching a vision, fundraising as a seed company is very different than private equity. And so I called 10 to 15 other founders in Canada, Mike Corbett, I mentioned Dan Park. Many of them are now customers. And I said, you're 3-4 stages ahead. What am I doing right now that makes sense? And what do you think I'm missing? And lastly is Golden Ventures, Jamie Rosenblatt and the Golden Ventures team were our first investor. And they provided an enormous amount of support and coaching to me along the way.
And was it easy to reach out? Was that something you knew you had to do right away?
I've always done that. I'm lucky that I had a good network already and some relationships already in Canada. But I do think that founders want to help other founders. I think successful people want to help other people trying to figure out their way in the world. And if you ask them to talk about not what you should do, but how they navigated a similar situation, people want to talk about themselves. And I've always found people have been very generous with me, and I try to pay that forward because each week some young founder calls me and asks me what to do. And later that night, I'm on the phone with some other founder going, I don't know what to do. And so the community in tech is built on people supporting each other.
That's how we learn and grow.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's one of our cultural values, learning and growing. Yeah.
That's awesome. In terms of how you lead, you speak glowingly of Uber's culture of high standards and the commitment to talent density. You're also passionate about the outdoors and the lessons it's taught you about resilience, improvisation, and teamwork. Those might seem like very different influences, but how do they come together to let you lead Float?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the premise always starts with this idea that building a company is really hard. It is like borderline impossibly hard. And so I have this frame, which is you have to understand the game you're playing on the field. If you want to play in a field that is very competitive, you need to anticipate and consider, how can I be competitive? Do I have the grit, perseverance, and resilience to do that? Building a startup is very different than running a lifestyle business. You are unprofitable. You don't have product market fit. There are competitors and incumbents that could kill you. You don't really know where you're going. And so you actually have to adapt to that. And what I took from Uber were a couple of cultural values. One is ridiculously high standards, standards that are so high that you yourself are worried you couldn't even meet them yourself. Two is this appreciation that in the world, what's different are not ideas. It's actually who's working on them and how are you going about building them. And so having an outstanding team, investing in finding people that bring passion, energy, grit, genuine desire to pursue the mission is really important, because the vast majority of people facing what a startup has to navigate would just choose to give up, because it's actually very rational. Why would you do this unless you're so passionate about changing the world of finance, in our case, right? And then lastly is customer obsession. I think customer obsession ultimately is not just a great cultural value, it's a smart business strategy. And so we say at Float, the whole sole purpose of our existence is customers. It's not just virtue signaling. It's this reality that if we don't build a product customers want, they won't use us. If we don't provide them with outstanding support, we won't be able to retain them. And so you can fake it all you want to try to sell and sell and sell. If you don't deliver something of value to customers, you don't have a business. Those are the things I took away from my time at Uber. And I think the outdoors, I go camping every year. I've gone for my whole life. I've spent, months in aggregate on canoe trips in Killarney Provincial Park in Algonquin. And, you love the waterfalls, you love the beautiful hikes and the views and eating good meals, but you got to shovel a lot of crap to get there. And portaging, this idea of, here's where we are right now. We want to go to this place that's 35 kilometers away. It's got this beautiful waterfall. It's got this amazing campsite. We're going to cook this amazing dinner there. On the way there, you're going to hike through mud. You are probably going to endure really difficult weather conditions. The map that you're following, halfway through the portage, a tree is going to have fallen and you're going to have to go bushwhack. And so you better be capable of improvising, of working together. And those early camping experiences where I went and someone gave me and two other people a pack, a canoe, a bit of food, and said, we'll see you in 90 minutes at the finish line, navigating that as a kid, as a teen, and as an adult, persevering through it and realizing that the journey is actually the really rewarding thing. If you got straight to the waterfall, it wouldn't be that special. When you get to the waterfall and you finally put your stuff down and go, wow, we just worked for 10 hours to get here, it makes the meal, it makes the view that much more meaningful. And I do think that's a big part of startups. You have to persevere through lots of ups and downs.
Well said. I think the best steak I've ever had was a steak I bought from Walmart camping. Had nothing to do with cost. It was the 10-hour portage, setting up the fire and cooking it and then earning it. So earning your keep.
Earning your keep and knowing that, we talk about this in building Float. There is a plan, but we also acknowledge the plan won't work. Something will go wrong. And success is not, did you have the right plan? It's what do you do when the plan goes wrong? And can you find ways to overcome it? There's lots of people in the world that can write a business plan. It's pretty easy. ChatGPT can do that for you. There's a very small number of people that can see it through even when it gets really hard. And the more you lean towards that mindset, you will find yourself as a team, as a company, as an individual, standing alone. Giving up last goes a long way.
So I'd say living in the moment.
Living in the moment and being unreasonably passionate about what you're doing. Like in recruiting at Float, I've spent a lot of time looking at character. Why does this person want to do this? If this person wants to do this because they believe so deeply in the mission and they feel so connected emotionally to what we're doing that they're willing to sacrifice themselves to get there, that scales, that lasts. But if it's about a job title, maybe a promotion, a certain level of compensation, the going is going to get tough at some point in time. Those are going to be the first people out of the boat, right? And so you have to look for people that really want to win, that really want to succeed. And I think enjoy it. If you enjoy technology, if you think about what you're doing as this is as exciting as anything I could be doing outside of work right now on the weekend. If you actually get joy out of your craft, it's a lot easier.
Well said.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot already. So before we dive into some deep stuff, let's loosen things up a bit. We're going to throw a quick segment called the Fork in the Road. This is our version of a lightning round. So there's a few rapid fire questions, and we're going to see where your instinct leads you. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Early bird or night owl?
Now I'm an early bird. I used to be a late owl.
Okay. What happened?
I developed insomnia and I got older and I have a kid now. So I've learned waking up early before the day comes at you is the time to have peace of mind to think before you're in one-to-ones and in meetings and running around.
That is good. That's a great answer. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Has it always been that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love coffee.
Coffee is what keeps us up. Mountains or ocean?
Mountains.
Mountains.
Yeah.
And why?
For me, it's canoe tripping. I'd probably say lakes and mountains would be it.
Lakes and mountains.
I grew up water skiing, canoeing, trekking through Ontario parks. So I like the mix, and I like free hiking. You know, when you go to a provincial park and there's some path and you say, who cares about the path? There's this mountain right there. I think if we go here and then we bushwhack through there, in 2 hours, we could actually have lunch there. Doing that is now my favorite part of hiking. It's actually not being on the path. It's making your own path.
And that leads so well to your career and where you're headed.
I enjoy it. Yeah.
Books or podcast?
Now podcasts. I used to read a lot more books. I'm having a hard time doing it lately. Podcasts are easier when I'm cleaning or I'm doing something around the house or I'm commuting. So more podcasts.
Is there a favorite podcast or something you lean towards?
Probably a mix of sports, hockey podcasts, and then business. How I built this is probably the one that jumps out most to me lately.
How I Built This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Lenny Rachitsky's podcast is excellent. I even go back and look at all the good historical ones and try to listen to one or two a month and synthesize, like, what could I learn from this and how can I apply it to my life?
Always seeking to learn and grow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Text or phone call?
Text. I'm realizing I have 175 unread text messages. So I'm not sure. I would say call over Zoom and text over call.
Text over call.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Getting a theme that it depends on the moment, the person.
Yeah.
A lot of underlying things.
I think cognitively, I get very overloaded by notifications. I think we all are. Email, Slack, text, WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram. There's a lot, right? LinkedIn. And so I'm trying to consolidate and try to be in fewer meetings, fewer one-to-one discussions. And if you're on Zoom all day or you're in meetings all day, it's exhausting. So some of my directs, we actually will say when we're having a meeting, like, do you want to just do a call? And that way I can walk around the block and you can do what you're doing. And we can focus on what we're talking about without trying to make eye contact through a screen, which is, I find, very, very tiring. So it depends on the conversation, but more phone calls lately.
I thought I was the only one.
Yeah. Oh, this is better. In person is always better, I think.
What's your coping mechanism if you get too many alerts? How do you kind of drown that out and focus on the task at hand?
I have ADHD, and so I've learned that time blocking is really important to me. I get probably more overwhelmed than the average person doing multiple things at once. And so I try to structure my day in a week. What's in my inbox? What are my priorities? What's coming up? And then rearrange my entire week to have 8 straight hours to do deep work, have no blocks of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes between meetings if I don't need them, have full days of just back-to-backs with a few breaks in between, and to do some meditation or cold plunging along the way when I feel really overwhelmed. And that usually helps me reset.
Maybe in Lake Ontario someday.
Maybe. I don't know. You seem more keen. It sounds like you did it, but I'll get there one day.
Go with the flow.
Yeah.
Create your own path.
Yeah.
Fancy restaurant or food truck?
Uh, Probably food truck. I like a fancy restaurant once in a while, but I think 90% of my meals, sort of utilitarian. Let's get this over with. I wouldn't mind it being okay, but I don't need to spend 3 hours ordering, looking at a wine list. Particularly during the week, I'm looking to get meals done and get on with what I got to do.
I love it. That is always one of my favorite parts of this. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's incredible how much of those quick answers can reveal. So let's shift gears and get back into some of the bigger questions. You said strategy is easy, but execution is hard. Can you share a moment when that gap between vision and reality really tested you?
Yeah, I mean, we experience that now at Float. As you scale, I think if you think about the earliest stages, if I go back to the very beginning of Float, we're not building a multi-billion-dollar business. We're trying to win 10 clients. Can we get 10 people to like our product? That's where strategy actually works against you. If you're going to go do some market segmentation analysis, you're going to try to run very, very complex digital campaigns. It's a waste of time. Go on LinkedIn and look up a bunch of companies that you think might want to use your product and go show up at their office. Go see who you're connected with. Just do it. Just literally go do it. That actually works really well. And I think that's where strategy is often a waste of time. As you scale, it starts to get harder. And we're experiencing that now where you say, if you've gone from 10 customers to 1,000 customers, if you want to go from 1,000 customers to 10,000 customers, you're now going to need to think about where can we find those customers. It's not going to be one tactic. It might be a couple of different channels. And so it becomes a little bit more multi-layered. Which ones will you invest in? What resourcing do you need in each of them? What are the conversion rates or the unit economics associated with doing that? That's where strategy starts to matter a little bit more. And so I do think it's a spectrum at the very beginning. It's all execution. And then as your company scales, strategy starts to become a lot more important across the company. But you want in the front lines of the company to be very execution oriented. What can we get done today? We all have the same challenge, just 24 hours in a day. We don't want to work 24 hours in a day. How can we work smart? How can we execute quickly? How can we do it with pace? And how can we do it faster than every single person that's trying to do the same thing? Because speed is an actual competitive advantage. As a startup, when we started Float, we had no less than 5 other startups, same pitch deck, same vision, the same things that they were talking about. And people said, well, how are you going to do it? And I just said, we're just going to work harder and faster. And so whatever that team or those other companies might try to do, what our customers think we might do in a year, we're going to do in 3 months. And that's a competitive advantage. When you don't have an advantage, when you have nothing, this thing you do have is speed. You don't have legacy. You don't have structures. And so speed is a huge advantage. Fail fast. Fail 10 times. And then on the 11th time, you'll get it right. If you had 10 attempts before another company tried 2 things, you can achieve a lot more than another team.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the greatest advantages of a small organization, being able to take some calculated risk, fail fast.
We've launched so much product at Float that hasn't worked. We've launched lots of things that we've deprecated and said, it was worth trying. It didn't work. Who cares? Let's move on. And so you have to have that balance of what do we want to pour our heart and soul into for 6 months and really get right? What do we want to put out into the market and see if it works? We run lots of amazing brand campaigns and marketing campaigns. Some land, some don't. Having the courage to just try them and get data, real feedback, is often better than spending 6 months trying to figure out what to do.
So no regrets.
If you have regrets, always. You always look back and go, we could have done that differently. But I do think that sense of pace goes a really long way. And it's just a mindset shift. Group of people are capable of doing so much more than they think is possible. And Float has been an example of that. Our mission is to ignite the full potential of Canadian companies. Float today offers a product and an experience that we thought would take us 10 years to build. And there's a bit of a reality distortion that you have to have, which is it seems impossible. People are telling us it's impossible. We're not quite sure how to do it. Let's just act like we'll figure it out and have the willpower to overcome what happens. And then suddenly it starts happening. And suddenly people go, oh, that's how it works. And then their resilience grows and people start thinking even more ambitiously. And that's really powerful. That compounds.
You've written that rejection motivates you.
Yeah.
Can you share the story behind that mindset?
I'm very motivated by it. I've learned a lot of people are not. I like being told I'm not good, that it's not going to work. And I carry that home in my backpack, so to speak. And I go home and I psych myself into good. I'm glad that person thinks that way. I'm glad I feel that way. I'm going to prove myself in the world wrong tomorrow. I was the last person to get admitted to the Richard Ivey School of Business. I was the last person in my class to get a job. And I did 40 interviews I think 40 interviews, and I did 100 coffees, and I didn't get a job. And every single time I got rejected, I woke up half an hour earlier and I made an even bigger list of things I was going to do. And I just said, I will not lose. I will not be defeated. I will hustle and meet as many people as I have to and study as much as I need to and research every company I meet until someone says, we can't not hire this guy. And in my first job that I got, I interviewed, the company thought I was too inexperienced. They had two other candidates that had investment banking experience. I was fresh out of school. And they said, look, we really like you. We think you're missing a couple of years of experience. And I said, I will bet you that if you put a case in front of me, I will beat those two other candidates because I'm an actual investor. I'm not here because I think investment banking or finance cool. I know more about investing than 99% of the kids that you're talking to. And fortunately, they gave me a case, and I thought it was going to be a big LBO model, and I was all prepared for that. And, of course, I was up against these candidates that had a lot more financial modeling experience. But I was a real investor. I've been investing for 10 years at that point and reading about investing. And the case was Coke versus Pepsi. Which is a better investment? You have 3 hours. It has to fit on one piece of paper. And I finished it and I got the job. And it was because I was doing something that I actually really intuitively loved and I wasn't making it up. And so they bet on me, and I'm thankful that they did.
That sounds like that transcends into how you operate today.
It does. Yeah. I've learned people in my company, a lot of people you hire may not be motivated by that. I'm actually motivated by, it comes, I think, from ADHD, this feeling that I'm not succeeding, that I'm screwing up, that I'm letting people down, I'm letting our customers down. It's not going to work. And then it motivates me to try even harder, to think even harder, to challenge myself. And then when we do hit a goal or we do achieve something, I say, well, that was good, but how much bigger could we go, right? If we got to this point in a year or 2 or 3 years, who's to say we couldn't become one of the largest financial institutions in the country in 5 years? And so you're constantly pushing out the envelope of what you can achieve and daring yourself. Can you get there? And I think that's something I've learned. I learned at Uber and startups. We were up against things that were absolutely insane. And we had this saying, people who will their way to a better outcome get to a better outcome. And so if you wake up every day and say, why not us? Why not me? Why not this mission? Why not Canada? Suddenly things start happening.
That's inspiring.
Psychology is a huge part of it. And I think lastly is, as a kid, I thought the world was very sophisticated, very smart. There's adults there, these big towers, they've got it figured out. I think as you go from your 20s to your 30s to now I'm almost 40 and you get into some of these rooms, people are just figuring it out. They're making it up as they go along. And there's a lot of stuff in the world that you learn doesn't make sense, and that came from my childhood. Like, Dad, why does this business work this way? Why does the airport work this way? Why is the line set up this way? Why wouldn't they set up the line that way? And you start to realize if you dare to ask those questions, you might start finding there are better ways. The issue is that sometimes people aren't asking the question. They don't want to ask the question. And so as I've gotten older and as we've built our business, we've learned to get comfortable thinking maybe people don't know better. Maybe we might actually be onto something, and our desire and our willingness to improve finance for Canadian companies, our desire and willingness to do the hard work ourselves to make our customers' lives easier. How do they close the books in an hour instead of 2 days? How do we enable them to pay vendors across the country instantly? How do we enable them to get access to capital faster than any other financial services company in the country? If you go and look at those companies, you'd say, well, they must know, they're very impressive, they're very sophisticated, until you lock yourself in a room and say, the outcome is we want a customer to be able to get access to this capital in 5 minutes or less, open an account with us in 5 minutes or less. What would it take for that to happen? And work backwards from that. Suddenly it starts happening. That's the entrepreneurial mindset you've got to have.
I love it. So big, hairy problems can be broken down.
Poke holes in assumptions, first principles thinking. If it takes, this is something we obsessed over, why does it take a month, 6 weeks for a Canadian company to open up a bank account? Why does it take a month, 6 weeks for a Canadian company to get an answer on what their credit limit is? We just say, well, what are the things we need to adjudicate? How do customers provide us with that information? Well, there's humans in the loop in the banking industry. They're working between 9 to 5. Business is not conducted between 9 to 5. Sorry to say it, it's 2025. You have technology. You can use automated underwriting tools. So we just did the hard work. We built all that stuff ourselves. And we said, if we have to work 7 days a week, we'll work 7 days a week. We have a saying at Float, the customer shouldn't wait. The customer doesn't care about which department you're in. They don't care about our working hours. And so we said, if you reach out to Float 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you get a response time in less than 2 minutes. And people said, well, that's unreasonable, and there's going to be these challenges. I said, we don't care. That's what we're going to bring to our customers. First, you just work really hard. And then you start to go, well, how could we streamline that? How could we build technology around that? But you'd never do that if you accepted the low standard, which is come on down to the branch between 9 to 5, not during holidays, and we can help you out. If you have the mindset of we are rejecting that thinking, it's not allowed here, let's do something different, all of a sudden the talented people in our company go, here's how we can get there. And that's very powerful.
I love it. I love it. Challenging the status quo, caring a little bit more.
Going the distance for the customer goes a long way. Just simply choosing to say, we're not going to subject our customer to that. And we still do. It sometimes happens. And we have postmortems internally. Why did this happen? Why did this customer have this experience? And we say, what happened? Why did it happen? Now, how do we ensure this doesn't happen for the other 4,999 customers? And it's that behavior, it's that sort of culture of don't fulfill the process, fulfill the outcome, and figure out how to amend the process to achieve the outcome. That's what innovation is all about.
You've shown how rejection and challenges have fueled your drive as a leader. Looking ahead, what's exciting you the most about what you and your team at Float are building?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the biggest opportunity in a generation right now at Float and what we're doing, and more importantly for Canadian companies. To me, what really excites us is getting customers access to capital quickly and moving it seamlessly. And so we've built now a number of products that allow our customers to move money, pay bills, close their books, in some cases 10 times faster than they've previously had. And so we're now powering billions of dollars worth of payment volume. We're providing capital, hundreds of millions of dollars to our customers on a monthly basis. It's actually allowing them to make more purchases, more hires, greater investments. We know the Canadian economy is going through a lot. And we're providing them with access to capital at a rate or a cost of capital that is lowest in the industry. And so that's really exciting to us. Like, we are ultimately there to serve the companies in Canada that are leading this country forward. And so that's very, very inspiring. We have today one of the fastest growing customer bases in the country. We're going to be serving over 6,000 customers by the end of this year. It's grown 50% in the last 12 months. And we've brought new products to market that allow our customers to send and receive money, close their books. We've reduced, as an example, the number of clicks that a customer needs to go through on Float to close their books at the month end. We've taken that automation rate from 25% to almost 80%. And you think about the hundreds of thousands of hours that Canadian companies have just eliminated that they can now use to think about innovation, investment, growth, things that actually move their businesses forward. That stuff's really exciting to us.
You are speaking my language.
That's the language of the Canadian economy. Yeah.
Love it. You said you want to make business finance frictionless. What do you see as the gaps, and how is Float helping to close them?
Yeah. I mean, to us, there's a couple of themes. Number one is access to capital. And it's not just the amount of capital a company can access, it's actually how long it takes to get it. And so I said when we started Float, it took somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 weeks for a company to apply, ask for capital, and then actually receive it. And in many cases, there's like a 90% decline rate. On Float, if you're using Float now, you can get access to capital in a matter of hours and a matter of days in some cases. So that's really exciting. It's not just about the amount, but it's how quickly you get it. Two is eliminating friction in how businesses actually manage finance. The combination of a mobile app, automations, and distributed spending controls, you can now empower your employees and your executives, your team, to use their own judgment on what they need to do and not spend time submitting receipts, not spend time submitting expense reports. We automate all of that. Time is the one thing, doesn't matter who you are, if you're Jeff Bezos or you're an accountant or a controller at a small Canadian company, there's 24 hours in a day. And so giving people time back is a huge source of a frictionless experience. And I think the last is money movement. So it's 20 business days in a month. For the average Canadian company, it takes them somewhere between 5 to 10 business days to actually pay an invoice and get the money there, right? The wire transfer timelines in Canada are very long. And cost of capital inflation is really high. That's very, very costly. We're now enabling our customers to send and receive payments in 2 days, right? And so they're not only getting payments done faster, that's more capital in their bank account. That's more capital that they can invest. That's more capital that can accrue interest. That compound math is what powers the ROI of Canadian companies. So those are the three themes I'd say that jump out most to us.
Fantastic. All innovative.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Yeah. Got lots more cooking.
Looking ahead, how do you see B2B finance evolving in Canada over the next few years? And where do you see Float as role in shaping that?
Yeah. I mean, there's some very tangible, exciting opportunities. One is consolidation. Today, if you look at the world, companies have bank accounts with a variety of different institutions. They use software from a variety of different companies. They send payments through a variety of different providers. We are consolidating that under a single platform. That consolidation doesn't just make the customer's life easier, but it allows us to automate how those things interact with each other. And so as an example, in the future, customers should be able to send and receive money instantly, not the next day, not the next week, not the next month, instantly. When you do that, you can have a customer have a single account, accruing interest 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they can make payments just in time. That's going to power a lot of really important compounding math. Two is automation and AI. Like the power of AI right now is just stunning. And the opportunity to eliminate today what are a lot of texts, email threads, Slack threads, a lot of in-person communications, to allow our software to interpret and perceive if this is what your company is trying to do. These are the rules that should be set up to manage spending in your business. This is how we can anticipate where will your money need to go over the next 45 days and 60 days. Instead of you building a backlog and scheduling all those payments, we'll line that up for you and allow you to choose how much capital do you want to have in your account. Do you want to earn a high rate of return, or do you want to have a high rate of liquidity to make those payments? This idea of programmable treasury, how do you ensure that you strike a balance between ROI and cash flow, which is a really key consideration for Canadian companies right now? Software, real-time payments, frictionless payments, all enable that. And so that's really, really exciting and something that's going to be coming for us.
These are a few things that I didn't think were possible just a few years ago.
Yeah, and they really are. And they're going to put time and money and capital back in the hands of Canadian companies. And that's what Canada needs. That's what Canadian companies need. It's not for lack of talent. It's not for lack of ideas. It's for lack of capital. It's for lack of enablement. And those are the things that we can play a role in. We need Canadian companies to do their thing, right? They have their own missions, their own ambitions. What we can do is enable it. We can build great technology for it, and we can advocate on their behalf. And that's why Float's a regulated company. We're a member of different industry groups. We meet with different industry groups and government groups to say, here's what the Canadian economy and Canadian SMBs need from you and us right now. How do we make that happen? And I think that's a big opportunity and responsibility that we have, which is to take the data, not the data, but the signal, the learnings, and actually ensure that goes to the policymakers that are crafting the future of this of this country, and say, this is what we need to be successful. And by the way, here are 8 countries and here are 8 case studies of how it can work effectively that we don't need to necessarily invent from scratch.
Awesome. Now, Float recently launched new business accounts. In doing so, you're really challenging the way business bank traditionally worked. What do you hope this changes for Canadian entrepreneurs and business leaders?
First and foremost, we make it easier. We hope it makes it easier for them to spend the money they already have. That's a sentiment I have heard time and time again, which is I've got money in an account, but boy, spending it and getting access to it and removing it is such a headache that I'm pulling my hair out. That's not the case with Float. If you are going to use Float and you're going to use one of our business accounts, it's there to serve you. And that means you can send and receive money across the border. You can send and receive money, whether it's across cards, ACH, EFT, all these different payment methods. It shouldn't matter to you. You've got something to do. You've got someone to pay. You've got money to receive. We'll take care of the rest. I think number one is make it easy to actually use the money that you already have in your account. 2 is to compound it. And like I've used that phrase a couple of times. When money is stored in a single account, not 8 or 9 accounts, you don't have as much leakage. And so we want our customers to be able to spend, invest, receive money without friction. But when the money's there, it better be earning. It better be doing something for them. And we really think that that's an important element of the experience. So those are 2 of the pillars that I think about that we want to achieve. And we'll keep collecting feedback and learning about what we can do better for customers.
I think every Canadian is going to want to hear about that.
Yeah, we hope so. We built it for them. It's taken us 3 years.
When you think about the next generation of founders and leaders, what advice or even cautions would you offer?
I think the biggest one is courage. I believe that while building a business is hard, it's not as hard as people perceive it to be if they have the courage to try it and to believe in themselves. And I think all founders need to have some healthy dose of ignorance. My co-founders, when they started Float and I met them, we started Float together, but they were already building a business and they were trying a bunch of different things. And the sentiment I would describe is they didn't ask how hard could this be. They just asked like, how hard could it be? Essentially, it wasn't like we know how hard it's going to be. It's like it couldn't be that hard. That level of naivety to some extent is needed. So I think founders need courage. They need optimism. They need belief. And I think a willingness to be gritty and determined. I do think if you're going to found a business, you better be all in. There's some naive portion maybe of the country that thinks there's a way to build technology and build something that's really meaningful between 9 to 5, part-time off the side of your desk. That's nonsense. It's not going to happen. But if you actually are so passionate about it and so excited about it, you can't stop thinking about it, go all in. And so I would say courage, perseverance, grit, and believe in yourself more than you might really feel. And the more you do that, the more things will get easier and you'll actually gain confidence because you'll come back to this phrase, we'll figure it out. And then you will figure it out and you'll feel more confident about navigating hardship in the future.
Wonderful. That naivety resonates with me because I had no idea what I was doing when I first started. And if I did, I don't know if I would have done what I attempted to do.
There's a great interview with Jensen from NVIDIA, and he's in a diner, and they're saying, you're one of the most powerful, successful, richest people on earth. If you could go back to your early self now and tell yourself what you know now, what would you say? And he'd say, I would say, don't do it. And they were like, what? And he said, if I knew what I know now about how hard it has been to get to this point, and the embarrassment and the mistakes and the shame that I've endured, I don't think I would have done it. And he came around to this quote that's why founders who don't actually know how hard it is actually get really far, because they just ask themselves, how hard could it be? And it is hard. Companies that are successful, there's this image that they're not going through hard things. They actually are. They're just giving up last.
That resonates. Thank you. We like to end every episode with something we call the next iteration. So each guest leaves a question for the next one without knowing who it is. What's the question you'd like to leave for the next guest?
My question would be, what's one uncomfortable truth about scaling a company that more leaders need to say out loud?
We'll take it. One last question.
Yeah.
Disrupt or iterate?
Disrupt.
I knew you'd say that.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Rob, thanks so much for coming on. It was great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Until the next time. To our audience, thank you so much for joining us in the Iteration Lab. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, or share content so we can bring you more conversations just like this one. Until next time, keep moving the dial.